The HOA president, in fact, accused me of damaging community property. But when I tracked down the pipe she was yelling about, I discovered that she'd been siphoning water off my property. And that soggy wine glass in her hand, just the start of her downfall. The anarchy began at what was supposed to be a peaceful Saturday barbecue in my backyard. Vivian Harper, our president of the HOA and occasional neighborhood despot, strode across my yard in stilettos, a wine glass in one hand and a cut garden hose in the other clutched as a murder weapon. "You murdered my roses!" she shrieked, her voice slicing through the humid afternoon like a siren. I stood there, shovel in hand, mud dripping off it from digging a trench in the back of my garage, and thinking I must have wandered in by mistake onto a soap opera. Vivian was angry, all right. She was beside herself. She accused me of destroying her sprinkler system for her garden party and threatened to call the police and report that I had vandalized community property. 2 officers were on the way unless I filled the trench immediately. But her story had a glaring defect. The unidentified pipe she was yelling about wasn't on any utility map. It ran right across my backyard and illicitly fed her irrigation system, and I had just shut it off. It had started innocently. Weeks of rain turning my backyard into a bog, I finally devoted a Saturday to the setup of a French drain. I'd done the whole 9 yards, permits, utility flagging, the whole shebang. And then I hit a wayward PVC pipe, unlisted, mismatched, and clearly not meant to be found. Intrigued, I followed it. The pipe led from the side of my garage straight into Vivian's perfectly manicured yard. When I shut down my master valve to safely investigate, her sprinklers clogged and died. And that's when all hell broke loose. Vivian didn't ask questions. She made accusations. She yelled that I vandalized public property and could have poisoned the neighborhood water supply. But I'm an engineer. I can tell when I see a cheap covert install. That pipe was no HOA connection. It was a backyard theft providing her private oasis with stolen water. She had called 911 like she was reporting a national emergency, groused at bylaws and threatened lawsuits. When the cops arrived, I calmly explained to them, pointing out the trench, the pipe, my permits, and even my flagged boundary lines. One officer complained, "This pipe ain't on no city map. Looks like they've been stealing water." Vivian complained, but they didn't let her get a word in edgewise. It was a civil, not a criminal matter. They told me to put up security cameras because, allegedly, our HOA had a reputation. The next morning, I woke up to a forged HOA citation taped to my door. Rule 43B, unauthorized earth alteration, $1,200, fine per day. One problem, Rule 43B did not exist. I had read the HOA handbook in an effort to avoid this type of hijinks. Vivian had fabricated it. That's when I got serious. I had my lawyer cousin compose a cease and desist letter on trespassing and property law violation. I mailed it using tracking mail. I then called the city utility department and requested an inspection. It was scheduled within 48 hours. Vivian would not give up. She doubled down on craziness instead. Another bogus notice arrived requesting a supposed emergency HOA amendment and proposing a new $500 penalty for unauthorized excavation. She was desperate. I chose to crash the next HOA meeting. The clubhouse was crowded. Vivian sat at the front in a blue blazer, her loyalists around her. She tried to cut in front of me, but I stood up anyway. I laid it all out on the table. The illegal pipe, the trench, the path it traveled to her sprinklers. I had photos, maps, and a survey showing the pipe clearly crossing my private property. No easement, no gray area. Gasps filled the room. Vivian scrambled, insisting the pipe was historic infrastructure, and I was ruining the visual appeal of the neighborhood. I pushed back. Private utilities are not HOA controlled. The board began to shift. One elderly gentleman asked why the pipe only serviced her house. Another neighbor complained that his water bill spiked. Vivian hammered her gavel and ran, literally knocking over a chair. But the game wasn't over. The next day I found a security guard standing in my lawn pounding a sign. HOA enforcement, do not disturb. Vivian had sent him. I told him to leave the property or I would have him charged with trespassing. He ran. I tossed the sign onto her lawn like rubbish. Neighbors started messaging me. Turns out I wasn't alone. People shared horror stories, fines for paint colors, threats over yard decor. One neighbor, Tom, gave me an old utility map from a decade ago. It confirmed what I already knew: no pipe across my land. But someone had drawn a red line across it in pen, marked H, Vivian Harper. I sent it all, video, maps, the bogus notices, to a local reporter doing a piece on zoning and HOA corruption. 2 days later, the story hit. HOA president embroiled in backyard water theft ring. It went viral. My video and the city utility inspection reports were indisputable. Vivian's mask dropped, her perfect face cracked. An illegal meeting was convened by the neighbors in Tom's garage. 30 showed up, fueled by pizza and outrage. The recall paperwork was drafted that night, and then the cameras got something incredible. Vivian, late one night, pouring mulch into the trench to cover the pipe. She slipped, dropped in, and hobbled off. The woman was breaking apart. By Saturday, the city had dispatched officials and inspectors. A contractor crew arrived, employed by Vivian, to fill in my trench. I showed them my deed. They collapsed and departed. The further down I dug, the more I found. Makeshift splices, a shut-off valve in the guise of lawn edging, and a direct connection to Vivian's top-of-the-line Wi-Fi sprinkler system. Photos were forwarded to the city. The recall succeeded. 2 members of the board resigned, and Vivian was shunned. She then tried to sue me for emotional distress. My cousin struck back with a harassment charge. Vivian even tried a last Hail Mary charm offensive, flowers with a note. Let's settle over coffee. I composted them. And then cameras captured her tampering with the pipe again, this time with a hired handyman, at midnight. I activated the floodlights and ventured out. Smile, you're on camera. She tensed. He ran off. I handed the footage over to the police. The final count? Landslide. 74 of 82 families voted Vivian out. She was fined for tampering with the utilities, was barred from future HOA board positions, and slid stealthily out of her house into a moving truck like a bad guy making a getaway. We held a driveway town hall. Reforms were enacted, power redistributed. I finished my trench and planted sunflowers over the capped pipe. Tom presented me with a plaque that said, "This yard broke the silence. Vivian's secret pipe maybe watered her roses, but in the end, buried her too."